This is the story of how Oreo used a clever combination of marketing and branding and cutthroat business practices to dethrone Hydrox as the nation's leading biscuit in order to become milk's favorite cookie. And more importantly, the business and marketing lessons that you can learn from this and apply directly to your own business or idea or message. And on a lighter note, I'll even show you a secret website that I just happened to stumble across while doing research for this case study, where you can order a number of different kinds of exotic Oreos from all over the world. Flavors just like this one, which we'll talk about later. But before we get to that, to figure out how we got here, we first need to take a real quick look at how this all began. So buckle up, because things are about to get crunchy. I'm not even sure what that means. So let's go. Our story begins in 1882 with an entrepreneur by the name of Jacob Luce, who buys the Coral Cracker and Candy Company in Kansas City, Missouri. 3 years later, in 1885, he renames it to Luce Brothers Manufacturing, and then changes the name again in 1895 to the American Biscuit Company. Then let's fast forward through a series of name changes and mergers and liquidations and all kinds of non-cookie related business stuff, where we end up in 1908 with the release of the Hydrox cookie, the first ever sandwich cookie. And with that said, let me turn it over to Morgan Freeman to explain what a sandwich cookie is.
A sandwich cookie, also known as a sandwich biscuit, is a type of cookie made from two thin cookies or medium cookies with a filling between them.
So, Hydrox became the world's first sandwich cookie. And despite having what is possibly the world's worst name for a cookie, which we'll talk about later, and for the first 4 years, Hydrox had a monopoly on the market, and they were loved for their taste and their exotic design. Packaged and sold as an English biscuit with a twist. A unique point of differentiation for the time, using an industrial press to create a stamped cookie that kind of looked like a flower. But here's where things get interesting. In 1912, 4 years after the release of the Hydrox cookie, Nabisco invents the Oreo, a cookie that the company described as two beautifully embossed chocolate-flavored wafers with a rich cream filling. Sounds familiar, doesn't it? But as long as something isn't trademarked or legally protected, there are no laws against coming out with a competing product. But even the name Oreo, whose origins has been speculated about for decades, appears to even be a direct ripoff of the mountain laurel that's printed on every Hydrox cookie. A mountain laurel, also known as an Oreo Daphne. I mean, come on. Oreo? Daphne? It's like you're not even trying to hide it. But despite following a relatively proven recipe for success, it wasn't smooth sailing right out of the gate for Oreo. In fact, it would take decades for Oreo to finally defeat Hydrox as the world's favorite cookie. And it's from this decades-long rivalry and epic cookie battle that a number of very important and valuable business and marketing lessons can be learned. The first of which is the true power of a name. Like I said before, the name Hydrox is possibly the world's worst name for a cookie ever. Second only maybe to roadkill biscuits, or poop cookies, or any cookie that has dried fruit in it. I mean, come on. It's not a cookie. Long story short, naming your cookie the Hydrox cookie is bad. Like, terribly awful. So why'd they choose that name? Well, the name Hydrox was chosen originally to suggest purity of product. It was created by mashing together hydrogen and oxygen, the two chemicals that make up water. Unfortunately, words have meaning and associations, and Hydrox, a name made by combining two chemicals, sounds medicinal rather than delicious. There's another strike against this name too, though, which is that there was already an existing Hydrox chemical company that sold hydrogen peroxide. Again, another bad association to have with your brand when you make cookies. But it gets worse. When Hydrox cookies were first launched in 1908, the pseudoscientific term Hydrox was being used everywhere, from Hydrox aerated table water to Hydrox ice cream and Hydrox ginger ale. And soon, the number of Hydrox-related brands out there meant the company couldn't defend their name in court. All that said, the bigger issue was still, by far, the chemical associations with the name. But Hydrox weren't the only ones to mess up. They had a strong following. People liked the taste, and they weren't about to go down without a fight, as Oreo would soon discover. Despite Oreo's popularity today, they're about the furthest thing possible from an overnight success. For years after their release, grocery stores struggled to entice customers away from Hydrox and towards Oreo cookies. And they were often left struggling to unload these cookies by any means necessary. In 1914, one store found itself with a 700-tin surplus of Oreo cookies that they just couldn't sell. So they made the mistake that most people do in these kind of situations, and they simply slashed prices, but then they took it a step further by berating customers, claiming that they didn't know what a truly fine biscuit really was. And this struggle would go on for almost 40 more years. For real. Oreo just could not get their stuff together, pardon the pun. Fortunately for Oreo, the company that made them, Nabisco, had pretty deep pockets, and so they could afford to take an L on Oreos and sell them at a loss. But then, in the mid-1950s, everything changed, and Oreo discovered an important marketing lesson. I don't know about you, but when I think of cookies, I think of fun, and happiness, and a tasty treat that I know isn't good for me, but I like to enjoy once in a while anyway. I may even feel a little bit nostalgic and bring back memories of my childhood and growing up. Well, apparently, this is what Oreo thought too, and they completely revamped and updated their entire marketing and messaging strategy. Their focus was on fun and bright colors and a tasty chocolatey treat that was crammed with more filling than any other brand. Hydrox, on the other hand, took the complete opposite approach and went with the grumpy old man angle. No, not in a cute, funny way, in the awful way that you imagine. You know, the stereotypical old man in a rocking chair on his front porch yelling at people to get off his lawn, thinking about the glory days and how much better things used to be. Well, if that sounds like a terrible marketing strategy, it's because it is. And so from 1915 to 1965, Hydrox took this approach and labeled Oreo as an imposter and as a knockoff and as a wannabe, even going so far as to warning people to not be fooled by lookalikes. Yikes. Unsurprisingly, when people reach for a cookie, the last thing they're looking for is a glass of judgment to wash it all down. Oh yeah, that's not nice. But the final nail in the coffin for Hydrox, and where Oreo really took the lead as the world's favorite cookie, was with a clever, if not genius, marketing play. A play that used a healthy dose of pricing psychology to reposition Oreo as the premium cookie. In the mid-1950s, Oreo finally figured things out and launched a brand new marketing and advertising campaign for Oreos, complete with a fancy new slogan, "Oh, Oreo." But the real stroke of genius was the price increase that went along with it. You see, pricing and price psychology is powerful, and higher price is almost always equated with being higher quality. For example, not knowing anything else, if I asked you what the better quality cookie was, a cookie that cost $1 or a cookie that cost $5, pretty much everybody is going to say the $5 cookie is better. They've done studies to prove this, not with cookies, but with wine, where the higher price of the wine, the better people thought it tasted, even when they were tasting the exact same wine. Oreo apparently knew about this psychological principle, and with the stroke of a pen, they raised the price and became the premium cookie, making Hydrox the cheaper, low budget, and less desirable cookie. And whether by accident or engineering, Oreo managed to replace itself in the mind of consumers as the original, making Hydrox appear like the knockoff imposter. And the domination just kept going from there. Once on top, Oreo wasn't about to ever lose their position as the world's favorite cookie again. Constantly trying to reinvent themselves, they changed their slogan 5 times over 10 years. From "For the Kid in All of Us," to "America's Best Loved Cookie," to "The One and Only," to "Who's the Kid with the Oreo Cookie," and Oreo, the original twister. And more recently, coming out with more relevant and trending topics that take advantage of pop culture as well as current events, basically showing that they're plugged into the current economy as well as its current customers. The most famous being the Super Bowl power outage of 2013, when Oreo tweeted their famous "Dunk in the Dark" tweet, but they've also come out with others, including the Tour de France, Shin Shin, the Mars rover, and even Elvis Week. Hydrox, on the other hand, was bought and sold by Keebler, and then Kellogg's, and then discontinued in 1999 before being re-released in 2014 by Leaf Brands. And even though Hydrox cookies are still available, it took a lot of work to get my hands on a couple boxes. And even then, getting my hands on these cookies was no easy task. I got 2 for research. Fortunately, I came across a website during my research called Underground Snacks, where I was able to order these Hydrox cookies, as well as a few different flavors of Oreos from all over the world. Flavors just like these red velvet ones. They smell kind of funny. I'm kind of scared. I don't think I want to take a bite. Good though. And these peach oolong tea ones. Tastes like peach and tea. And these yellow ones, which I can only imagine are lemon, but I have no idea. Lemon. So clearly Oreo's done a good job, but for even more examples of what great marketing looks like, the next thing you're gonna wanna do is check out the video I've got linked up right here on Tesla's marketing strategy. So make sure to check it out now, and I'll see you in the next video. Tesla has recently topped Instagram as the fastest growing brand in the world, according to London-based company Brand Finance. This shouldn't be too surprising though. After all, they've positioned themselves well in some of the fastest growing and most popular